So this video is kind of a cautionary tale. It's a tale of two cities. In this one city resides a lot of people who spend virtually all of their time thinking about, worrying about, ruminating on, focusing on, basically doing their best to avoid all the things that could possibly go wrong. Do you know people like this? We got a whole town of them here. We'll call this Worry Town. And in this other city, though, you have a bunch of people who just culturally, it doesn't even occur to them to spend much time worrying about much of anything. Instead, they spend their time focused on what they want, right? Not on what they don't want. They ruminate on the possibilities. They're almost 100% focused on what they want or hope to go wonderfully right in this or that situation instead of what could go terribly wrong. We'll call the city the land of possibilities. Now, both of these cities reside on the same planet, both subject to the same laws of nature, the same laws of probability. Things could, of course, go wrong in both cities, and do. You have mishaps here and you have mishaps there. You also have good things happening in this city and also in that one. But if you were to know, generally speaking, in which city do you think better, more gratifying things tend to happen more often for its residents? In which city do you think more positive experiences tend to show up versus negative, painful, or unwanted experiences? In which city would you guess people are generally happier? In which city would you guess people are generally more successful, more satisfied, more fulfilled? Now, of course, this is by no means a trick question, no pun intended. So I don't really expect there would be many of you that would guess, well, you know, people are probably happier and more satisfied in the city where they worry all the time. Of course not, right? That's not going to be the case. I mean, for like most people, you'd expect those who spend more time thinking more positively to be happier and overall more successful, right? Yeah, of course. But why would we expect this to very probably be the case, even just intuitively? Well, if you thought it through, you might assume it comes down to what they do differently, including how they tend to think differently. But assuming that is the case, how exactly does one lead to the other? How does more positive thinking, for lack of a better term, tend to lead to better, more desirable outcomes that are physicalized in the real, tangible world? And most importantly, how does this relate to you, the hair puller? And how can you use this insight into the power of thought, the power of focus, to help finally free yourself from this prison called Trichotillomania? Let's get into it. We're going to talk about that right now. Stay tuned. Ever hear the old saying, we become what we think about? How about energy flows where your attention goes? Now, of course, I didn't make these things up. And that being the case, it appears more people than just me have realized that where we place the focus of our minds on a habitual basis has everything to do with the results that tend to show up in our lives. The late author, speaker, and self-development expert Dr. Wayne W. Dyer wrote a book, among his many publications, entitled The Power of Intention. And in this very special book, he ventures to explain exactly the phenomenon we're talking about here. He claims we have the ability to literally co-create our world according to our wishes, according to our dreams. And he says we do that by tapping into what he calls the universal source of creation. I mean, something created all this, right? And you tap into this universal source, according to him, to co-create your world and what shows up in your world by vividly imagining yourself surrounded by the conditions you wish to produce. So he tells us that the more often and the more effectively we can mentally and emotionally drop ourselves right into the midst of a vivid, sensory-rich imagination of our greatest desires fulfilled, that's how you co-create your world. And we say co-create because, of course, we're tapping into a power of some other, are we not? Some people might call that power, that energy, that field of manifestation, God. You might call it something else. You might call the whole thing hogwash. But if you do, let's go back to the scenario I asked you to consider at the outset of this video. Do you remember I asked you to consider a town, a city, some place where people are simply in the habit of focusing what they want instead of what they don't want? And then I invited you to think about the opposite, Worry Town, right? Just culturally, through no specific fault of their own, they just grew up in a place where that's what people do, you know? They just have an overarching tendency to worry all the time about what could go wrong instead of what could go right. And the question I asked you was, in which of these two towns do you just sort of suppose people are generally happier, more satisfied, more fulfilled? Notice, I didn't have to tell you anything about the power of intention, to coin a phrase, and yet you already had a sense for which of these two towns that was going to be. So just instinctually, you have a sense that what I'm saying here is true, and that folks like Dr. Dyer and others, including Neville Goddard in his book called Resurrection, all they're doing is attempting to begin to place a conceptual framework around this idea, to talk about how exactly this may come to be. Now, how does this apply to you, the hair puller, or the parent of a hair puller? Well, it's quite simple, and that is this. Consider that the act of worrying about or heavily focusing on your problem, that is what you don't want, right, hasn't actually worked very well for you, has it? Now, I'm not saying you're doing it on purpose or that any of this is your fault. Fact is, I don't know anybody that worries on purpose. Why? Well, because, worry is painful. So instead, it tends to be something people get into the habit of doing with a lot of practice. So it's no one's fault, least of all yours, if you're one of these people who worries too much. It's not about good or bad or fault or blame, but that doesn't change the facts, which is that continued focus on what hurts you, on what you don't want, certainly hasn't fixed the problem yet for you, has it? And in fact, an argument could be made that it's only made things worse for you. I mean, look at the situation you're in right now. So here's the key takeaway from this video, and that is this. Your brain will follow your orders. Tell it what you want, and it will give it to you. How do you tell it what you want? Well, you don't speak to it in English or in any other spoken language. Instead, according to Dr. Dyer, Neville Goddard, Napoleon Hill, and countless others who have made it their life's work to delve into the mysteries of manifestation, you have to show your brain what you want, not tell it in words. Remember what I quoted from Dr. Dyer before? He said, in order to manifest your desired outcome, you must vividly imagine yourself as surrounded by the conditions you wish to produce. And notice that if you're doing that effectively enough, we're talking about a vivid, sensory-rich imagination of your goal state achieved, you certainly would feel that, wouldn't you? Of course you would. Now, think about this for a second. What do you suppose worry is? Well, it's the exact same thing, but in the opposite direction. It's a vivid, sensory-rich imagination of yourself surrounded by a set of conditions that you don't want, or may even fear instead of what you do want. And you associate to them emotionally so incredibly effectively, it's as though the feared event has actually come to pass and that you're in the middle of it now. That's that anxiety you feel. Well, that's exactly what you don't want to be doing, because as I just stated, that's exactly the mental mechanics you would use to tell your brain what you want. Problem is, you're telling it what you don't want. But again, your brain will follow your orders. Show it what you want and it will give it to you. That's the insidious nature of compulsive worry. So do you begin to see why allowing yourself to focus on what you don't want instead of what you do want can indeed tend to bring more of the bad stuff into your life? Listen, whether or not this is all hocus pocus or whether you think this is all airy-fairy nonsense, conscious creation, tapping into the universal source and all that, a lot of people, including myself, think there's something to this. Even the Bible makes reference to this. Are you a believer? What does the Bible say? Ask and you shall receive. Mark 11:24. Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours. Matthew 7:7. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be opened to you. Matthew 21:22. And whatever you ask in prayer, you will receive if you have faith. So there's something to this, right? Maybe something beyond what we can just see. But apparently there's something to this idea that how we use our mind, the power of our thought, the power of our focus, and our imagination has everything to do with what shows up in our world, good or bad. So how can you practice conscious creation, especially in the context of helping you take control of your hair pulling problems? Here's how you do it. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to set aside just 5 minutes a day. And I want you to close your eyes and create a vivid, sensory-rich imagination of what your world will look, sound, and feel like when you're finally totally clear of this old, outdated hair pulling problem, and you're 100% confident it's going to stay that way. And the way you're going to do that is you're going to ask yourself what will be there when you're finally totally free of trichotillomania. What will be different? What will be in your world? Where will you live? Who will be with you? How will you be spending your time? How much more time will you spend enjoying yourself? Notice I'm inviting you now to focus on what you want, not on what you don't want anymore. And the key is, as Dr. Dyer says, you must contemplate yourself as surrounded by the conditions you wish to produce. So imagine yourself right in the midst of what your world will look and sound, and very importantly, feel like when hair pulling is no longer an issue for you and hasn't been for some time. Do this for just 5 minutes a day and see what a difference this makes. Hey, if you want to do it 10 or 15 minutes a day, I can't stop you. I will say this, the more time you spend in the imagination of your outcome fulfilled, the more intensely you feel the victory while you're there. That's what sets in motion the universal forces that tend to conspire to bring either the good stuff or the bad stuff into our lives. Try this, and please do leave a comment below. Let us know how practicing this exercise has made a difference for you. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please go ahead and pound that like button and subscribe to our channel. We'd love to be able to notify you when we have new content, more helpful videos coming your way. And you know what? Go ahead and hit that reply button below and leave us a comment. Talk to us. How did this video impact you? If you're watching this video at our Facebook community page, please leave a comment there. We'd love to meet and chat with you. In fact, if you have questions about trichotillomania or hair pulling in general and you're just not quite sure where to go for answers, please visit our website at www.trick-free.com. You'll see a Contact Us link at the upper right of all of our web pages. We do actually look through all the questions that come into us very carefully, just like we do to the comments and questions that show up here at our YouTube channel. And we do our best to answer as many of those questions in these very videos as possible. Again, please do be sure to like and subscribe. We're here to entertain, inform, and most importantly to empower you to begin taking control of your hair pulling in ways you probably never thought possible before. If you'd like to reach out to us directly to get some information about how we can help you or a loved one, feel free to visit our website at www.trick-free.com. If you'd like, you can write to us at relief@trick-free.com. And you can also call us at any time of day or night, toll free at 833-TRICK-FREE. I will always love how that rhymes. Thanks again for watching. I'm Robert Mantell with the Trichotillomania Relief Specialist. Here's wishing you an amazing trick-free week.